Hey everybody, welcome to C3. Welcome to our weekly teaching. I'm Kent Dobson. Oh my God, what an insane month, an insane year, and an insane week, and an insane last 2 days, 3 days, 4 days since many of us cast our ballots. And one of the things I love and sometimes also dread is when it comes to being a teacher, is that no matter what, I have to show up here on a Sunday morning and turn my attention toward meaning, to ask questions like, what the heck am I going to say? And what really matters? And what's true? And what can I say from my own point of view, honoring the other points of view out there? And I was going to say it's a love-hate, but it's mostly a love. It's challenging to show up. And this is one of those weeks where I'm like, oh, really? What the heck am I going to say? Because I don't know. And it's so many freaking words right now, a glut of words. And a glut of announcements and proclamations and predictions and accusations and I've been picking on the urgency, the political urgency that we're confronted with all the time with the news and the ticker on the bottom of the screen. And this week, I was just like, how many times could that guy, this is serious, how many times did that guy on CNN zoom in and out of counties this week? I mean, seriously, how many times? Zoom in, zoom out, zoom in, zoom out, zoom in. I know more about counties in places in the United States than ever before. At least I know the names of them and apparently the kinds of people that live there. In and out, zooming in, zooming out. Just trying to collect data. Never mind the question of meaning. And here we are at C3 in the middle of a year-long series that I'm calling Meaning Matters. What if we could give our attention to the question of meaning? And each month we have a word. This month is exploration. And let me go ahead and say, I'm not sure how much today will have to do with exploration. I think it does. But I want to try to speak to the cultural mood, the cultural climate from my point of view that we find ourselves in. And I think it has something to do with exploration, but we'll see. We'll see by the end of this. So thanks for joining us today. Thank you for being a part of C3. We need spiritual communities. And I would go so far as to say we need all kinds of spiritual communities because they're like a reminder that market forces and corporations and even political parties don't have the final word on the meaning of life. And spiritual communities are just, I don't know, the kind of place that at least I think we should be saying what really matters. And so, yeah, thanks for being a part of this conversation and thanks for lending your voice. Oh, something I keep forgetting to mention, and maybe some of you are new to C3 and to this weekly teaching, but every single Sunday at 11 o'clock, we have a Zoom get-together after the teaching, which we call Talk Back. It's our chance to talk back. It's super rewarding. You know, if you're a part of C3 and you've been to Talk Back, how life-giving it is when we're meeting in person. But same with Zoom. Even if Zoom might be a bit of a stretch for you, it's worth learning, honestly, just because getting together in this format and hearing from other people's voices is also really rewarding to me as a teacher because I get to just check in. What'd you hear? What are you thinking? What questions do you have? And sometimes I change my mind on my own talks. So anyway, join us. How would you do that? If you're not a part of C3, sign up for the newsletter on our website, c3westmichigan.org. And there's you have to do a little digging, but not much, to find our newsletter link. And the newsletter comes every single week. It's actually excellent. Read it. All kinds of information in it. Plus, it will have the Zoom link for the talk back. So maybe that's enough advertising for that. And just a quick shout out to those of you who contribute to C3 financially. Oh man, what a gift that we are still here, still going, still trying to make good content, still trying to support local musicians, still trying to do things in the community that we think make a difference. So your contribution makes a difference, and I can't thank you enough. Yeah, so I'm feeling really grateful to be a part of this place. And here's my genuine question. Are we really so divided? Really? Are we really so divided? That is the dominant narrative right now. The non-negotiable, status quo, dominant narrative, we are a divided nation. And I'm hearing it on the right and the left. We're more divided than ever. What's that mean? And is that a bad thing? And maybe a question I won't be able to get to, but if we are divided and we follow that flow upstream like a river, and we try to find the tributaries, we try to find the source for this division, what would it be? And maybe it would be too complicated to even name. I'm going to try to today in the way I like to look at things, which is mythically, symbolically, and historically. Particularly today, I want to say some things about history and the kind of what we might even call natural divisions that make up the human story. And I hope that it will shed light on the divided nation we find ourselves in. And maybe just in terms of exploration, if you ask yourself this question, all right, so as far as we know, Biden is going to be the next president of the United States. And I mean, Trump might not concede for a while. I don't know as of making this particular teaching, if that's true or not. And even if there are court battles, personally, I mean, not that you should follow what I'm saying, but personally, that doesn't really bother me. Let's find out. I mean, let's find out if there are any inconsistencies or even corruption or just human errors or computer errors. I mean, this is a strange time, and it's really worth taking a very careful look at how we elect, not just who we elect, but how we elect. Are we going to grow up and live in the 21st century, or still use, methods from 1890 to count votes or whatever? I don't know. So I'm just saying, it doesn't bother me. Sue away. Let's find out. Let's let the court system sift through that material. And, in a year from now, that'll mostly be forgotten. So, anyway, what was I kind of got sidetracked there. In terms of exploration. So, it looks like Biden's going to be the president. And here's something surprising to me. And I think everybody was surprised by this, just how close the election was. We're talking about a few thousand votes here or there, just a few thousand votes. And so many people voted. We ought to be celebrating this as Americans. Like, people used to complain that Americans are the least engaged political, country. But not this year. And it could be because Trump was one of those provocative, lightning bolt kind of figures. And a lot of people just woke up and said, all right, let's pay attention on both sides. So a lot of people turned out, and it was very, 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 very close as far as we tell. I mean, let's forget about, delegates and all this kind of stuff. It just, from as far as we can tell, it was pretty close in some pretty key states. So here's my question in terms of exploration. What do we have to learn about our neighbors? Honestly, what do we have to learn about our neighbors? I heard some really, really disturbing things from the left this week. Really disturbing. Here's something that was disturbing. People were boarding up their windows all over the country in case Trump won. So, that's disturbing to me, especially in a in a left that on the surface promotes tolerance. So that's just interesting to me. Here's something else I heard that disturbed me this week. This was by a pretty famous author. I don't want to name her right now, but she said, "I'm terrified of half of the country. I'm terrified." Okay. Is that how you want to spend the next 4 years or the rest of your life? Terrified by your neighbors? And what are you going to do about it? Even if you are terrified, what are you going to do about it? Live in fear? Or condemnation or blame or wish it away? Or, you know, I don't know what kind of circles you were listening to, but there was a lot of talk of Trump, at least in some of the press I was reading, that Trump was a bit of an anomaly. Like, people were just sick of government and bureaucracy and career politicians, so they voted in Trump to see what he would do. Or we voted in Trump, the American populace, and it was just an anomaly. And don't worry, there'll be a massive blue wave and everything will go the way of the left or something like that. Well, that didn't happen. Not in the way that people were talking about or even wanting it. So what does that say about America? And what are you going to believe about your neighbors? This is a genuine question. What are you going to choose to believe about your neighbors? Or even, I don't mean choose like, well, I'm just going to choose to believe X. What are we going to do to find out? Because one of the things that, I got this from my wife. She said, I wonder if it's possible to separate personality from policy right now. And I was like, no, I'm not like sophisticated enough to do that. But it's an interesting question. Because after all, you know, especially with Trump, we elected a massive personality. Well, he also had policies behind that. I know many of his policies I was not a fan of. Would I say that of every single thing he did? If I'm really honest, no, I wouldn't. So what does it look like to re-engage the conversation of policy? And I'm not about to think for 2 seconds that Biden is going to be some kind of miracle savior and all of his policies are going to, you know, come down from God like Mount Sinai or something like the 10 Commandments. No, it's still a democracy. Politicians are flawed. They also listen to people. And it's back to the question of what policies do we really care about? What represents your values, my values? And what about the whole? What about the country as a whole? And what serves all of us? So really, really challenging. And so we'll be back in those conversations, I hope, where maybe personality won't so dominate. And in some ways we could say, hey, let's blame Trump for that. But why blame him? I mean, we were the ones caught up in the wake of his, what's the right word? I'm trying to think of another word besides personality. It's kind of like the larger than life, almost cartoonish, over the top. You know, he had a way of sucking in people just with a tweet, you know, and we fell under that spell. All of us, and the media especially. All they did all day long was care about things that he tweeted. And there's still the issue of policy beneath that. So I'm just sort of naming some things that have been on my mind. And one more thing that really did disturb me that I think we ought to wrestle with. So I heard someone on the radio, another famous author actually, pretty well known. I'm leaving names out of it because I just don't want to play that game right now, pointing the finger with names. But she said that any vote for Trump was deeply rooted in racism. And I refuse to believe that. I do. I refuse to believe that. I'm not saying racism isn't a problem. It is a problem. You've heard me say during my teachings that it's in the human shadow and it's in my shadow. I'm the first to say, yep, I harbor racism. And there are some deep psychic reasons for that. There are biological reasons for that. There are social reasons for that. It's complex. But I'm not about to say I'm above that just because I have a master's degree and, studied overseas or whatever, and kind of such nonsense as if I'm like, I've educated myself out of that. No, it's possible. And perhaps it's even part of the instinctual self, but consciousness can grow. And so what I want to say is, all right, yeah, there's racism in America. And how might we help consciousness grow? Starting at home, how might my consciousness grow to expand and to include more people that I put on the outside? But to just go ahead and say, blanket statement, half of the country is racist. I say no. And I say, no, I don't want to play that overly simple game. So those are things that have been disturbing me. And I think now is the time, I've been saying this actually all of 2020, it's time for a searching spiritual inventory. Let's add to it. It's time for a searching moral inventory. Let's add to it. It's time for a searching political inventory. I mean, how many of you, I wish I just thought of this now, but I dare you to read the definition of liberal right now out of the dictionary or Wikipedia, the classical definition of liberal, and see how well it lines up with the Democratic Party. Just try it and see if there hasn't been some shifts and some erosion of some really good values. Anyway, what am I trying to say? Right now I'm trying to say, maybe it's not time to ride into Jerusalem on a horse, victorious. Maybe it's not time for that. After all, Trump, one of the things that he loved to do was turn everything into winners and losers, winners and losers, winners and losers, this kind of dualism, and winners win and losers lose. And so is that the game we're going to play as a country? Are we just going to continue? Well, we're right. This is where I have a problem with it. Because we won, we're right. So I want to say, well, maybe some of our values prevailed if you were the kind of person that voted for Biden or didn't vote for Trump or something. You can say, hey, my person or the way I look at things is in a position of power now, but does that mean we're just done? No, definitely not. And especially if you were watching those maps and realizing, oh, this election is way closer than we realized. And so, again, what does tradition have to offer the world? I'm going to get away from conservative and liberal for a minute. What does tradition have to offer the world? What does progress or the progressive have to offer the world? Or innovation, tradition and innovation, tradition and innovation. This is the great dance, which you've heard me say before. After all, there would be no evolution, change, or innovation if we weren't responding to some kind of tradition. And tradition, if it didn't at times put the brakes on, we would always be running after the glitz and sometimes even the fantasy or the illusion that we definitely know what the future should look like. So we're back to that tension, innovation and tradition. And let's not forget that. And I used to really mock that there were only two parties, right and left, two options. But in some ways, I've changed my mind a little bit. Maybe it's just as there are two halves of the brain. There's tradition and innovation. There's the right brain. There's the left brain. And maybe in some ways it just reflects human nature. And I would like to be the kind of person that no matter where you're coming from, you're a Republican, you're a Democrat, you're an independent, yeah, what can we all do to do our own searching moral inventory and get to know our neighbors now? Wouldn't that be amazing if the tone that we set in our lives, in this community at C3, in your family, for the next 4 years was a tone of how well do I know the people that I live near? And what do I have to learn from them? And how can we cooperate? So anyway, those are things that have been sort of floating in my mind. So as promised, I want to just say something that has occurred to me this week. One of the things that almost seems without question right now is that a lot of the division in the country is, if that's the right word for it, is rural and urban. And I think this is very, very, very interesting and very, very important. I grew up in Virginia, in the hills, in the sticks. My parents lived in a log house. Now I say house because I'm going to say cabin. It sounds like we were, like just trying to eke out a living. No, my parents were middle-class parents, but we did live out in the middle of nowhere. We had to take our garbage in the pickup truck to the dump, to the county dump. We were so far out they didn't have like garbage trucks and things like that. And if the power went out, then we were without power for a week easily. And everyone I knew around me were hunters, fisher people, rural people. That's how I grew up, and it shaped me, I think, in kind of profound ways. And it's true when I think about it. What does rural Virginia, Blue Ridge, Appalachian, what's that life like? What are the concerns and values of that life? And what does that have to do with downtown Chicago or LA? Not much. Like different lifestyle, different way of life, different rhythm, different concerns. I mean, you realize there are still parts of this country that don't have internet. Definitely not high-speed internet. That's interesting to me. America is that big. And I used to love that. I always like that sticker, no farms, no food. Because it's just a reminder that when I go to a nice, organic, not during the pandemic, when I go to a restaurant with my family and it's organic and the chef, this is, farmed raised, free range, organic chicken, and, this arugula was, hand grown in whatever. Where does all that stuff come from? It comes from people with their hands in the dirt. And I think we ought to do some soul searching about what is the relationship between our urban environments, our urban communities, and rural America. Where is the mutual respect? That's what I'm saying. Where is the respect? And how might we begin to talk to one another? And I saw this week a map that someone made where it was not blue and red states. They had boiled it down all the way down to the county level and sort of even the pockets within a county of red and blue. You know what it looked like? It looked like a map of the arteries of the human body. And it so struck me. Like, okay. Just these capillaries and arteries and veins and like a spider web all over the United States. And it looked kind of beautiful, really, and complex. And my feeling was, okay, this is a better image than... Okay, sorry, bit of a computer error. Speaking of technology. All right, let me finish what I was saying. It was kind of beautiful, all these capillaries. And I thought, okay, this is a country I'd like to get to know. Maybe that's the simplest way of putting it. So this reminded me of something, which I'm not going to go into tremendous detail about right now. This is the story of Cain and Abel. This is as old as Mesopotamia itself. There's always tension between the farmer and the shepherd, between civilization, water, land permanence, that's civilization, and the shepherd, the nomad, the wanderer. These are the great tensions. And just the fact that they need one another. In the ancient world, the farmer needed the shepherd and the shepherd needed the farmer. Or civilization needed the farms and the shepherds and the farms needed civilization. They're in a kind of dance. And I just want to say, hey, we're not all that grown up. I know this is not 5,000 years ago, but in some respects, just in terms of human evolution, I mean, let's say the Homo sapiens, our current version, is something like 2 million years old. And really, maybe 50,000 years old in terms of that's as modern as we are, 50,000 years old. And let's not forget, that is nothing on the scale of human evolution. Nothing on the scale of the evolution of the universe, 14.5 billion years old. It's a joke. We don't even know how big that is. We don't know how much time that is. So we just got here. And maybe that's as much as I want to say today. I want to wish you well in the coming days. I want to, if you need a little searching moral inventory like I do, may you have the courage to do it. And may we do some soul searching. May we get to know our neighbors over the next few weeks and months and years, whatever time we have left. And yeah, what did this have to do with exploration? I'd say, may we continue growing, not settling down and assuming I'm right, my politics are right, my spirituality is right, but may we stay on the journey as humbly as we can. And let's try to co-create a better future for our kids and our grandkids and our great-grandchildren and people we will never see. And may we do it humbly and honestly. So thanks for listening. I hope you heard a hint, a guess, a clue, something that you find challenging. And yeah, again, I wish you well. Hang on the C3 Facebook page for our musicians, which I'm so grateful for joining us each week. So yeah, I'll see you soon. Peace.